The late afternoon sun was falling low, spilling golden light across the park. As I stood beneath the shade of the old banyan tree, my hands shoved into my pockets and my chest tightening with each breath I took, I had come here, without a reason, or so I told myself. Maybe just to walk, maybe just to breathe, yet something deep inside had guided my steps. Until they brought me here, and there she was, sitting on the wooden bench near the fountain, the gentle sound of water mingling with the melody of her laugh, a sound I had once thought was mine alone, her head tilted slightly, her hair catching the light as if the sun itself adored her, and beside her sat the man I had heard about, the man who had once broken her spirit and left her eyes dim with pain, the same man who now leaned in, saying something that made her laugh again, her smile unguarded, her gaze soft, and for a moment I saw not the hurt of the past, but a woman who had chosen to forgive, or maybe to forget. I felt the weight of memories pressing against my ribs, the nights when she had called me to cry, the mornings when I had sat with her in silence, because words were too small to hold her pain, the promises I made to never let her fall again, and yet here she was, her body turned toward him, her eyes bright in a way I had not seen in so long. I wanted to go to her, to take her hand, to remind her that I had been the one who stayed, the one who picked up the pieces, the one who loved her when she could not love herself. But my feet would not move, they stayed rooted to the ground, as if they knew something my heart did not want to accept. I could not be the one to pull her away from a happiness she seemed to have found no matter who it came from. The sound of her laugh carried across the air, and it felt like the final note of a song I had been clinging to for far too long. I turned slowly, the gravel path crunching beneath my shoes, the tree's shadow stretching before me as I walked away, not because I did not love her, but because I did, and that love was not the kind that chained her to me, it was the kind that set her free, even if it meant watching her walk into the arms of the man who once hurt her, and even if it meant my own arms would remain empty. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt unnatural at first. The absence of her voice, the lack of her sudden messages in the middle of the night, the stillness where once there had been motion. I filled my time with work, with coffee that grew cold before I finished it, with music that drifted into the background. But in the quiet, I began to understand that sometimes love was not about claiming, but about surrendering. I had loved her enough to want her joy more than my own, and though my heart ached with the hollow space she left behind, I also felt a strange peace blooming slowly within me. One evening, as I sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker on, I thought of the way she had looked in the park, the sunlight dancing on her hair, the softness in her eyes, the ease in her smile. I remembered the strength it had taken for her to rise after the heartbreak he had caused, and I realized that maybe part of me had stayed to protect her until she could stand again. Perhaps that chapter of my love was over, not because it had failed, but because it had done what it was meant to do. I would not lie to myself and say I no longer longed for her, but I had begun to accept that some people are not meant to be ours. They are meant to pass through our lives, leaving behind pieces that shape who we are. And in loving her without asking for her to stay, I had learned the kind of man I could be, one who walked away without bitterness, one who carried her laughter with him not as a wound, but as a gift, even if the gift was one I'd never hold again. And so I lifted my gaze to the night sky, where countless stars shimmered, indifferent, yet constant, and I whispered her name into the dark, not to call her back, but to let her go fully, knowing that in another life, in another time, perhaps she might have turned to me. But in this life, I had given her my love and my freedom both, and that was enough.